Ladies and gentlemen, this is ATACS, Adults Talk About Cool Stuff, and we are doing a very special episode today. This is something we've been talking about doing for a long time, but logistical problems, as always, kind of derailed it for a while. This episode is a spoiler cast for The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. And logistical issues continued, so we are a two-person show today. I am Flex hosting. This is July 16th, 2017. And I am joined by Mr. Nate. How are you doing, Nate?
Doing all right. If you can't get it done soon or with a full crowd, you just do it at some point with two people.
Yep, that's exactly how this happened. We said we're tired of waiting. We're tired of dodging around things and dealing with other people's weirdness. So we're just going to do this. So yeah, at some point you just got to do it.
Yep.
So that's what we're here. So this is we're calling this a spoiler cast. So we are just going to spoil the crap out of Breath of the Wild. So if you do not want to be spoiled on anything and everything about Breath of the Wild, you should turn this off right now. Because this is no holds barred. We're just going for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has listened to our other podcasts, more like around when this game actually came out, we've already shared a lot of opinions on the game. So if you want a non-spoiler take, look those up, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have talked a lot about Breath of the Wild on our regular episodes back in March or April of 2017 when we were actually playing the game. But those impressions were very kind of general and high level, where we would say things like, I like the combat, or I like the music.
It's great.
Yeah. All of the hottest of takes.
Yes. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. No, we did have pretty good conversations about it before, but this time we're really wanting to dig into more of the nitty gritty that we didn't want to spoil in those episodes, both for our other panelists and listeners who may not have finished the game.
Yeah. And it's a weird one, especially I feel like with Breath of the Wild, because I think I've even said this before on the podcast, is that it kind of feels like everything is a spoiler in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of just talked about what we wanted to talk about and tried to keep it non-specific, I guess. But now we can talk everything we want, so let's just talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about anything. Yeah, it's a weird one because I feel like you could either say everything's a spoiler or nothing's a spoiler.
Yeah, you could go either way.
On your definition of spoiler.
Sure.
So we kind of took the safe route and just kind of treated everything as a spoiler for the regular podcast. But yeah, it's a weird, interesting game for that stuff. So I guess to start it off, we'll both just kind of reiterate kind of those broad high level stuff that we've already talked about, but we'll do that quickly here and then dive into more specifics. So, I mean, just first up, we both have said multiple times that we love this game. So I guess for you, Nate, what are the big picture items that stand out to you that make this game so great?
Oh boy. When I think about Breath of the Wild, I guess it does come down to that true, full, huge open world exploration adventure thing, mm-hmm. right? So
yeah,
it is the process of looking at the map and seeing something potentially interesting and going and climbing that hill and seeing what's there.
Yeah,
that's just the loop of that game, and it's surprising all the time and super interesting more often than not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the game really is all about the world.
Yeah,
because you spend 95% or more of this game exploring that overworld, and there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's huge. I played the game 80 plus hours probably, and constantly exploring new areas. I was not retreading. I was very rarely retreading ground during that time. Like you're just constantly seeing new areas, and like you already mentioned, there's a lot of climbing you do. Like that's kind of the loop. Is you climb something, you look around, you point out places that look interesting from that vantage point. You kind of mark them on your map, and then you just start going to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do it again. And it's crazy how they were able to design the world to support that too, because they obviously, between just being able to climb virtually any surface on the overworld, and then also the glider, which allows you to get down from any surface very easily.
There's a mobility to your character in that game. To Link himself, even from the start, like by the time you get off that Great Plateau, you're a pretty mobile dude, and you can kind of get into any spots you want to, and then get down from them, as long as you're, generally paying attention to pathways and options and your surroundings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your only real limit is your stamina for both for getting up and down from places. And I mean, even at the beginning of the game, with one stamina wheel and like no stamina food or outfits or anything that buff your stamina, like you can, if you're smart about it, you can still get up almost anything, even with that
just
starting stamina wheel.
Yeah.
Obviously, as the game goes on and you get more stamina and you get better gear and food and all that other things, like you can just kind of straight shot up mountains without having to really think about it as much.
Yeah, it makes you lazy. That's what it does.
It kind of does. It kind of just allows you to shortcut things, I guess.
Yeah, but that's actually a whole nother thing that I really love about this game, is that sense of progression that it has.
Mm-hmm.
Because your character significantly changes between the starting point and after I finished, which I guess, that's getting everything, or all the shrines at least, but it's a pretty substantial change in your character's abilities and how you move around the world and what you're thinking about and all that stuff.
Yeah, there is a really nice progression, and it's also nice that like that progression is not necessarily required.
No,
so like you get all of the key abilities. So I mean, the game starts you out on that plateau, and you get all of your key abilities right at the front, and all of the other progression in the game after those first 2-3 hours, is totally optional. But it still feels meaningful. Like you think of so many. I was about to say open world games, but not necessarily just limited to open world. But you think of so many games where any optional progression just doesn't feel that meaningful, or it feels like it breaks the game entirely.
Yeah, it'll either completely destroy the game, or just feels like, well, why would I waste time on this?
Yeah, but they somehow found a way to make the progression feel meaningful without making it breaking the game. Like, even the core exceeds, like having more weapon slots is meaningful.
First time I found the Korok Seed guy, I was doing a happy dance. I was like, oh yes, this is amazing. Yeah, like having extra weapon slots is very, very like useful, but it's also not critical or game breaking. So it's one of these things where like everything you find is great to have, but it's neither necessary nor game breaking. So they somehow found a good balance with that stuff. Yeah, even getting that good old Master Sword is another thing that's like, oh yeah, this is totally helpful and works within the systems of the game, but it doesn't negate any of the systems of the game either.
Yeah, like you could definitely get through that game without the Master Sword, and when you get the Master Sword, it's not like that's the only thing you're going to use and it's going to crush everything either.
Right. Like it's good and it's useful, but
it's good. It's very nice to have.
Yeah.
But it's not going to just instantly win you the game either. They found a really good mix with that stuff. It's just the whole. I mean, to me, the star really is the world, because I legitimately can't think of another open world game with a world simultaneously this big, but also this dense with interesting things. You think? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think like probably the closest runner up off the top of my head would be like The Witcher 3, which is very, very big and also dense with pretty well realized, interesting stuff. But they are very different, obviously. And I think in terms of just it being an open world where the goal is exploring and finding cool stuff, this is still superior to that for me. Yeah,
I almost see them as different things, because like The Witcher 3, like the interesting stuff in its world is very much like
characters and
characters and dialogue.
Lines. Yeah.
Yeah, it's characters and dialogues and plot lines and that stuff. Like,
yes.
Like Zelda, it's the world itself that's interesting, not its inhabitants. It's
right.
It's like when I climb this ridge and I see what's over it, like that itself is interesting to me, and I want to explore that.
Yeah,
because like The Witcher 3, I'm not like really exploring every nook and cranny. It's like I'm just trying to find the next town or the next person or the next exclamation point above someone's head.
Yeah.
Whereas Zelda, I'm literally like borderline looking under every rock because
there might be a Korok seed under that rock.
Yeah, there literally might be a Korok seed under. That's probably how I got half my Korok seeds, was by picking up a rock. So like it's the design of this world really makes you want to just like traverse every inch of it, which is crazy when you think about it, especially with how big this world is.
Yes.
But they like it has that like Nintendo smart design touch like in every part of the world, because it's not even just like you're exploring it to find rewards. I mean, there obviously are a lot of rewards between the shrines and the seeds and like all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But like if you think about how Nintendo designs their more linear games, it's like, you know, you take something like a Mario and it's like Mario doesn't really change a lot during Mario games, but by varying level design, they keep those games interesting and give you interesting new ways to use the skills you have. And like the overworld in Breath of the Wild kind of does that just everywhere. So it's constantly giving you different, between the environments and the enemy compositions and that stuff, it's just kind of always presenting you with a different way to think about how to use the tools at your disposal.
Yeah, totally. And there's all sorts of, you know, different ways to approach any given situation. So like even when you do come across like, oh, I've seen a Bokoblin camp like this before, like there's another way you could go about it, and you might see a different thing for you to try or have a new idea just based on the sort of direction you approach from and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really, you know, supported by the game's systems. So, you know, the sort of mixture of its very light stealth systems and it's, you know, good enough, but not like incredibly deep combat stuff, but also just like how does fire propagate and how do things fall through physics and your tablet abilities like magnesis and stasis and all of that.
Yep. Yeah, they've really found a way to just like make all of that stuff work. And I think they like, because for how big and dense and like for how much stuff there is in this world, it also feels like and for how many systems there are, it also feels like they could have gone crazier with it. So I think they actually reined it in a smart way where it's like there's just enough systems that can interact in interesting ways, but it's also not like overly convoluted.
Yeah.
Like it all makes sense and is intuitive enough.
Yeah, every system is abstracted just enough to where it's like, oh, okay, I see it work once and I wrap my head around it and I got it. Yeah. And then the next time that it comes into play, I'll, you know, incorporate that into whatever else is going on and make decisions based on that.
Yeah, like something like lightning striking a metal weapon if you have it equipped. It's like,
right.
That's a very simple and intuitive thing, and like once you discover it, you just immediately understand it. It's not overly convoluted, and then there are ways that you can use that if you want.
Yeah.
Like throwing your sword into the Bokoblin camp and letting the lightning strike it.
I definitely had at least one combat encounter where a storm rolled over while I was fighting a bunch of guys, and I was holding a metal sword, and I was like, well, I'm just going to throw this thing at them right before the lightning strikes, and it's like the most satisfying thing in the world.
Yeah. Or rolling boulders around, or setting fire to grass, or just those different things. Like they're useful things. I would not be surprised at all if they had come up with other things like those, and they just took them out because they either didn't have use or were too complicated or something like that.
Yeah, I could certainly see the too complicated argument because it is a case where everything is just simple enough to be useful in a lot of different situations. And it's something where the time it takes to think about it and execute it is minimal, and so you're just kind of like always trying things.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to preface this by saying kids are not dumb. Like,
Yeah,
kids are smart, but I think, like, I bet if you're like, you know, a kid playing, like, however old we were when we played like A Link to the Past or Ocarina, like, I bet kids that age playing this game just like, I bet that's like heaven.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
And like, I think the simplicity of this game like really translates to all ages because
It does. Yeah.
it's a very interesting game no matter what age you are, but it's simple enough that anyone can appreciate it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's really great. But yeah, the thing that I always come back to with this game being so good is just the world design, and like it's simultaneously different from a lot of open world games, in ways that I really like. Like when I think of games like, you know, an Elder Scrolls game, or I don't know whatever other open world games you want to throw into the conversation, but I always think of just like so much repeated content,
and everything feels like, well, I'm working through a checklist.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm doing it is so that I can say I did the checklist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I'm doing this to get X number of collectibles or to reach level X, so I'll get this power, or like there's always some contrived gamey reason for doing things. And that often involves going through like, oh, I'm going to clear 10 bandit camps, all of which are the exact same, or I'm going to like clear these like randomly generated dungeon requests, which all basically end up being about the same, or
right.
And I feel like with this game, with their world design, they've really shifted the focus to be like, no, you go do this thing because it's interesting and you want to see it.
Right. The closest things that Breath of the Wild has to those are like the shrines and the Korok seeds, I think.
Yeah.
But the shrines are actually mostly unique.
Yeah, I was about to say that if you exclude the combat shrines, I think the shrines are... So I think the shrines, to me, I compare them to like portal puzzles.
Yeah, they are.
They're like portal test chambers, basically. So like they're all very standalone, unique puzzles.
Yeah, they're standalone, unique, discrete areas that are about like spatial problem solving, right? Mm-hmm. Using whatever abilities you have when you come in. Mm-hmm. And they're all doable with the baseline abilities. So, and I think those work, and I don't think that they fall into the same trap of being a checklist thing. Like, yeah, you want those shrines so that you can get more hearts and stamina for sure, but you're not getting them just so you can say I did it.
Yeah,
they're also interesting design elements in there as well.
Yeah, they don't fall into the typical checklist trap by virtue of being very unique, and by virtue of you don't get anything special for doing all of them. So like,
true.
Like if you do, there are 120 in the game. If you do 119 and stop, it's like, that's not a big deal. It's like,
so you got like one less heart or one less stamina thing.
Yeah, the difference between getting 119 and 120 is very minimal.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, so
you
like,
really,
you know, with
however many of them you want, and you're going to get the reward proportional to the number you did.
Exactly. Yeah, most of the time when I think of checklist items, it's like you want it, like you get all the reward when you get all of them.
Yeah, or you get very small rewards along the way, but you get the real reward at the end.
Yeah, and that always makes it this thing where you pull up the checklist initially, and you're like, all right, is this worth doing all these or not? Whereas this, like, you never see the full list. You don't even know how many shrines there are unless you look it up. And like, it's very much a thing of like, do as many as you want or as many as you find, and like wherever you stop, you've gotten that proportional reward out of it, and that's fine. The Korok seeds, I think, like, they're clearly more repetitive than the shrines, so like I think those are probably the thing that align closest with other open world games, but
for sure.
The Korok seeds are also like so unnecessary to get.
Yeah.
It's like we were saying before, it's nice to get those extra weapon slots, but it's also like
once you get a couple, you don't really need them anymore.
Yeah,
but they do fall into certain patterns, whereas like, oh, this is the kind that is, I have to put the rocks into a certain pattern, and this is the kind where I just have to chase the little light that's running along the rail.
Yeah. Yeah, or this is the one where I have to pick up another rock.
Just a random rock.
Yep. Usually at the top of a mountain.
Yep.
Yeah, but even those, it's like, so there are 900 of them in the game, which is a crap ton.
Yeah.
But I think I read somewhere that you actually max out all of your slots at around like 450, so about half the actual Korok.
Oh, really? So they just literally don't intend for you to find them all.
Yeah, they do not intend for you to find anywhere close to all of them. Because
that's a really good way to do it for me, because obviously finding 900 of those things is insane. Mm-hmm. But they put 900 in the game in the hopes that you would find some decent percentage of them. Yeah,
and like everyone's going to find different ones. Yeah. So it's like they just literally just scattered them all around the map and said like, yeah, you're going to find some amount of these, and but finding all of them is ridiculous. Like no one should ever try that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to handle it. I'm sorry?
Say, hey guys, don't do that.
Don't
let you find.
Yeah. I think that's a really great way to handle it, because how many did you get total? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I have my Switch. I can pull it up, but I think it was like 200.
Yeah, I should have pulled up my Switch. Yeah, I think mine was just below 300. I think I was like 280 or something. But do you know what the reward is for getting all 900?
I don't.
You get a piece of poop.
What? Oh. Well. All right.
I kid you not.
Can I like plant the seeds in the piece of poop as fertilizer and then like grow a cool tree or something?
No, I'm pretty sure you literally cannot do anything with it. It's called Hess, because Hess2 is the guy who you turn your seeds into. And you get it. You turn them all in, and he gives you Hess. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. It's called Hess2's gift. And it's literally a piece of poop.
Great. Yep.
And I'm 99% sure it does absolutely nothing.
It smells pretty bad. That's what the item description says. That looks like a little poop emoji. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, cool.
Yep. And you can see, actually in that screenshot, I just sent Nate a screenshot of this. In that screenshot, you can see he has 459 seeds in his inventory. So 900 minus 459 is how many it takes to actually get.
So he doesn't even take the last ones? He's just like, oh, here you go.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, you found them all. Here's my poop.
Yeah, I just checked. I got 273 in my file.
Okay. I think that's pretty around where I got as well.
Yeah. I felt okay about.
Oh, yeah. I was more than happy with that. There were some areas towards the end of the game where I kind of looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
For them. So I actually hit that number like probably a good 10 or 20 hours before the end. Yeah. And at that point I said, like, it takes me, I don't know, 30 or 40 seeds to get another weapon slot, and I don't care about the other things. So I'm just going to stop looking for them.
Yeah, I think it was for me, I got one upgrade and then said, oh, I don't care about getting the next one. So I just literally stopped looking for them at some point. Yeah,
so it's funny if you look at my map, because like it shows you, there's like a little seed icon to show you where the seeds you got are. Like areas I went earlier in the game, I've found way more seed, like it's more dense with those icons on my file. And then like as the game went on, I stopped looking for them as much. Right. So my map looks kind of funny with that. I guess the last broad thing I was going to touch on before we got super specific, we start getting specific, is I really like the look and sound of this game.
Yes.
I think it's like just artistically gorgeous. And I think the music is also like the art also, like there are a bunch of very, very different areas in the game. Like I mean, we've talked about it being a big world, but they use that size to really get a lot of diversity in the environments.
Yeah, for sure.
And the art really makes them all shine. Like you can go from climbing snow-capped mountains down to some plains, to a swamp, to a desert, to a fiery mountain.
And once you get more like comfortable with the game and get some more mobility, like you can kind of transition between those maybe a little too quick. It's kind of like, I was just on top of a snow mountain, now I'm in a volcano.
Yep. Yeah, you can transition pretty quickly. But it's great to see those different kind of environments.
And you're right that the game is absolutely beautiful pretty much throughout.
I made very liberal use of my screenshot button.
Yeah.
I have a whole lot of screenshots sitting on my Switch right now.
Yep.
And I think musically they do really cool stuff. Like there's not a lot of like themes that stand out necessarily, but they do a really good job. They do a really good job of using silence well.
Yeah.
And then bringing in just those like little musical cues and riffs like at the exact right times to just kind of evoke that adventuring spirit.
For sure.
Which is just really nice. This is one of the few games I've probably ever played where like just literally like walking through the world is just very pleasant and enjoyable.
It is. Yeah, 100%. It has a very strong style and tone to it that it kind of flows throughout all of the art and the music and the storytelling and everything that gives it a very specific sense of place. So I totally agree. I think that just moving around that world, it feels real and it feels fantastical, but it's also just enjoyable to be in at the same time. It's kind of like all these different seemingly opposed forces is like, well, this place sucks, but it's kind of nice to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, man, Death Mountain sure is real gnarly, but it looks fucking cool.
Yeah.
There's so many moments in the game where I would just sit there and stop and look around and it's just
and you're encouraged to do that because you want to find all the cool stuff. So like they're really like doubling down on
that's true.
Good about their game.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I mean it really gets back to like everything does feed into just encouraging you to explore. Like even just the visuals and music and tone of the world, like that stuff is encouraging you to explore as well.
Yeah, like the first time you come across like one of the horse stables, like probably everybody has a similar starting experience where you go east off the Great Plateau, right? Mm-hmm. And you go between those two mountains that are like sliced in half. The
dueling peaks.
Yeah. And you can go, make it through that path in a couple of different ways, which is already cool. Mm-hmm. And the reason everybody goes that way is because the game kind of guides you to go that way at the beginning. But
yeah, that's kind of the one time in the game where they give you somewhat explicit direction is when you're getting off the plateau and you're talking to the king. And like, he gives you that quest to kill Ganon, and he also gives you that quest to go to Kakariko Village.
Right.
Which is to the east through that pass.
Right. So you come off of this central, the central plateau where the only person you met is the old ghost man who turned out to be the dead Hyrule King, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you kind of go through this kind of ominous, barren area where there's like, if you immediately drop down east off of the plateau, you kind of go through some burned villages.
Yeah.
Like bokoblins everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then you go through the dueling peaks, which looks like, a god himself or herself literally came down with a sword and struck this mountain in half. It's like a really striking image. Yeah,
the dueling peaks is one of my favorite places in the entire game because you go there early and it just looks awesome. Like it looks awesome in like the original meaning of the word awesome, in that it like inspires awe. Mm-hmm. Because it just looks like literally like at the very peak, it's this mountain, and at the very peak of the mountain, there's literally just a giant split going down it.
Yeah.
And you can see the dueling peaks. So, I mean, this is another thing that happens in this game is once you play long enough, like you can see the dueling peaks from large distances. Mm-hmm. And I would regularly landmark myself by being like, oh, the dueling peaks are over there. Yeah. That means I must be in this region of the world.
Yeah, there's like a couple really prominent landmarks. There's the dueling peaks, and then there's the Lanayru mountains. Lanayru, and Death Mountain, of course. Death Mountain and the castle.
Yeah, Death Mountain, the castle, and the Hebra Mountains you can kind of landmark off of. And just to a lesser extent, the desert, it's like you can kind of see the ridge where the desert is.
Well, yeah, there's probably a desert over there.
Yeah, it's like you can't really see the desert itself from far away, but the ridge around it that the desert's behind, you can do that with.
But yeah, to wrap up what I was saying earlier, keep getting off track here because this game is ridiculously cool.
This is a really easy game to get off track about.
Yeah. So you kind of go through from the central plateau where you haven't really talked to anybody other than the Dead King. You go through some burned villages, through this dueling peaks, which is pretty cool, but there are like some enemies in there. You're kind of like, well, eventually I'll make it to a village, right? That's where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of come out of the dueling peaks, and then you get your first horse stable, which I think it's just called like Eastern Stables or something.
Yeah. No, I have a map up here, and apparently it's called the Dueling Peak Stable.
Oh, okay. And like everybody, for the most part, if you're coming into this game blind, you're probably going to have that experience.
Mm-hmm. That was my experience.
And then we were talking about how like the music and sense of place all comes together so well. Like I think all of those things like feed into your sense of what this world is. And then you come to the stables and like the super relaxing music comes on. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh, okay, there are like safe spaces. There are like places where people exist and live their lives.
Yeah, because like you said, at that point, you've really only seen the ghost of the king.
Right, and some burned villages and a mountain cut in half, and it's like, oh, this, I don't know.
Yeah. And then you get to that stable, and you see people kind of like, tending to like horses or like leaning up against a tree playing a banjo or whatever. I mean, that probably doesn't actually exist, but
I don't know if it does or not.
Kind of the vibe you get from it, or like a dog running around and is playing this very chill music, and it's a really nice moment. The first stable you get to.
Yeah.
And the funny part about that stable specifically, it's right next to that giant battlefield that has all the dead guardians.
Oh yeah.
If you go a few steps past that stable, you then are just like, oh, what happened here?
Yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of moments where you kind of come into an area in that world and you're like, what is this place's deal? Like, I don't know. This seems bad.
Yeah. But yeah, this game is just filled with moments where I would just sit there and kind of in awe of like the setting and like just the moment around me. And like I would regularly seek out places to explore just to be like, what is this place going to look and feel like?
Yeah.
Which is very rare for me to do in games. Like that's like usually you're exploring, even in exploration focused games, you're exploring with a more like gamey purpose, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I did explore for gamey purposes in this, but I would also explore just to see something.
Yeah, totally. Especially early on, like the process of learning that game, which is like both a blessing and a curse in some ways. Like the process of learning that game and like seeing what it is and how it works early on when you first start was like magical. And the downside of that is that I'll never get that again.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing about this game is so much of it relies on like discovery and exploration that I don't know that it'll have the same impact playing it a second time.
Yeah, definitely not.
To be fair, most games probably don't. Like, my first time playing Ocarina of Time was my best experience with Ocarina of Time.
Sure.
But that game is still more replayable than I would assume this game is. I haven't played Breath of the Wild twice, but
right.
I would assume the second playthrough is probably not quite as magical.
Yeah.
So we'll transition a little bit here because we started talking about like heading east first towards Kakariko, going through the peaks. I'm curious, like what kind of general route did you take through the game? Like what kind of order did you see things?
Right.
And like coupled with that, like what all did you do? Like you already said you did all the shrines and got 270 whatever seeds.
Yeah. So I did get all the shrines and, sub 300 seeds. I did all the divine beasts. I didn't do like all of the side quests necessarily. I kind of by the end was sort of picking and choosing the ones that seemed the most interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I know of some that I missed that maybe would have been cool to do.
Yeah.
But my general route was, so I'm looking at a map now.
Yeah, I mean, you said you started off going east, so I assume you probably did the Zora Beast first.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the standard path, is to go east to Kakariko, and then she tells you about, you go there and meet Impa, and I think she gives you the quest for the 4 divine beasts.
I think so, yeah. You go to Kakariko, yeah, and I think she gives you that, and also the quest for the memories.
Yeah.
Did you get all the memories?
I did get all the memories.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I went and did the Zora Divine Beast first, then went to the, Death Mountain area and did the Goron one.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of went straight from there to the Lost Woods where you get the Master Sword.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of worked my way, I guess, counterclockwise around the map for the most part. Then that would be the Rudo 1/3, and then the desert last, and then I basically finished up like the southernmost area of the game after doing all the divine beasts.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I took a turn. So, I mean, you basically just started going east and just kept going counterclockwise the whole way.
Pretty much, yeah.
I did a weird turnaround in the middle. So I started going east. I also did all the shrines, got a similar number of seeds, did all the memories. So, like, I think we actually had probably similar totals at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did a similar thing where I did the Zora first and then went to Death Mountain, did that one, did that beast. And I got to the Lost Woods after that and did that stuff. But after I did the Lost Woods, I actually went back down to the, southeast part of the map. Basically went back down to around, Hateno village and started going clockwise from there.
Okay. So you just reversed the clock at some point.
Yeah. So I basically did what you did up until I hit the Lost Woods. And then after doing the Lost Woods stuff, I reversed the clock and went back the other way.
Yeah.
So then I did all the stuff in the south and the southeast, and then did the desert, and then went up and did the Rudo stuff. And the very last part of my game was I did the Rudo Divine Beast, and then there's all that area north of the Rudo that is just seemingly endless tundra and mountain and snow mountains.
Yeah, just huge snowy mountains.
Yeah, and
there was really hard to find.
Yeah, there was a 5 to 10 hour slog at the end of the game after I'd done everything. I'm just I am just lost in all of this snowy tundra expanse.
It's terrible.
Yeah, that was probably actually my least favorite stretch of the game was when I was literally just trying to kind of find that was probably the one part in the game where it was a little bit checklisty because I kind of wanted to find all the shrines just for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably my least favorite area. It was just the endless snow.
Yeah.
Of that area. So it was just trying to find the last few shrines in that area. Got to be a little bit of a slog, but it wasn't too bad. And I was glad I did it. And I mean, and there was some cool stuff in the snowy area too. They had some interesting puzzles and stuff around there, making use of ice and rolling snowballs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the area where there were a couple of big doors you had to bash open by rolling a snowball down the hill as far as you could.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting idea, but I remember it being a little finicky.
Yeah, I remember two of them off the top of my head, and I remember one of them being extremely finicky.
Mm-hmm.
That actually got a little frustrating. But I mean, it still goes to show that just how every area in this game kind of has its own stuff.
Right, because those kinds of puzzles don't exist anywhere else in the game.
Yeah.
So if you just ignored that area, you wouldn't see that whole
exactly.
gameplay idea.
Yep, and that's why I wanted to see all the areas, and find all the shrines and stuff. And also of course climb all the towers and get all the map and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess from here, so trying trying to decide if we want to talk about like, let's go ahead and talk about like, I guess like from exploring the world, like what are things that stand out? Like what are kind of your highlight moments of like from just all of the exploring you did in the world? Like what kind of things stand out as like, oh, this was just incredible?
Yeah, because I think that's a good way to go for this. I think because it's partially very personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody's going to have some different answers. I think everybody will have some similar answers too.
Yeah.
But I think that helps to show a lot of the breadth that this game does have.
Yeah.
So I know for me, a lot of those big moments probably happened earlier in the game when you're still learning stuff.
Yeah.
So I had, looking at this map now, I had one specific memory that was really kind of a grueling but cool experience.
Uh-huh.
So at some point when I got around, I guess I started heading up towards the Zora domain. It was after I had explored around Kakariko a lot. I was heading north and I was like, well, there are some pathways that I hadn't really explored in that like Lanayru mountain area. And I ended up in the Lanayru Promenade. Do you know the area I'm talking about? It's like a river going through a big canyon in the mountains with like almost like Aztecian buildings like set into the mountainsides all up and down the sides, and there are Lizafos everywhere.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about now. Yeah.
And so it's this like really interesting like level design area for this game where there's a ton of verticality and just enemies and items everywhere.
Yeah, it's like all of these ruins like embedded in the side of a big like ravine and cliff with like water at the bottom.
Yeah, and then water at the bottom, and then there are all these little nooks and crannies along the sides, and just like I said, just Lizafos everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was like, at this point in the game, you know, those were still scary enough that I didn't just like charge through and murder them all.
Yep.
So I was like, that was definitely a process of like, it took me forever to make my way through that ravine. And then I got to the end where there's like a big, like imposing gate leading to a snowfield.
Yes.
And
and there's actually one of the memories is at that gate.
Yeah, and I think I picked that up then. I think that was the first memory I got. And then you go through this gate onto this big, like, wide snowfield with snowy trees and, like, the big snow mountain in the background, and it's, like, a really nice-looking area. And that's where I met my first Lionel.
Yep. I actually remember that Lionel.
Where I got completely, like, wrecked.
So you tried fighting your first Lionel?
Yes.
When you saw him? Okay. Yeah. Did you ever kill a Lionel?
Oh yeah.
I never actually did. I just never really tried, to be honest.
Oh really? Okay,
yeah. I mean, like the first time I encountered them and like, you know, kind of sparred with them for a little bit. And obviously I was really weak the first time I encountered one.
Yes.
And like, I recognized that they were just really tough. So I was just like, all right, these are obviously super high, powerful enemies.
Yeah.
So I'm going to avoid them. And for whatever reason, I just never made the mental switch of like, oh, I should actually try and fight these. I just kind of carried that mental stigma the entire game of like, these are things to avoid.
That's awesome.
I
kind of like that because they are like super imposing enemies. Like,
yeah, I never killed a Lionel.
They do not mess around.
No, they don't.
But I actually fought that Lionel and died once and was like, no, this is not how this ends. I made it through the Lizafos ruined city. I am Link. This Lionel is not going to best me.
So did you kill that first Lionel?
I did, and it took me a long time.
I was about to say, how long, so one, how many times did you die? And two, how long did the successful fight take? Because they have a lot of health.
They do have a lot of health. I think, if memory serves, that's one of the lower level Lionels.
Okay. Yeah, because there are different ones.
Yeah, there are different ranks of every enemy type, so I think that was one of the lower, if not the lowest type. But he still took forever and burned through all my weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think I probably had just enough to be able to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like weapons and resources, because I had actually spent a fair amount of time like scouring the area around Kakariko and like brewing some potions, because I was like, I don't know, maybe some of these will be useful, and I ended up using like all of them in this fight. So it was like this crazy intense boss fight that I had just out in the open world after I had gone through basically what is the equivalent of, you know, a Zelda dungeon from any other game, like this big ravine area. And
like, that's the crazy thing about this game is any area, if you fully explore it, kind of turns into its own dungeon.
Yeah, so I literally had this experience of like low-level Link going through this dangerous dungeon-like area and then fighting a really hard boss at the end, and it was like more epic than most scripted dungeons from any previous Zelda game.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. I played kind of a scaredy cat Link the whole game. Like, I actually avoided combat the vast majority of the time. I did very little combat.
Yeah.
It's like I'd kind of poke at things like the first time I'd see new enemies just to like get a sense of them, but like in general, when I would see enemies and camps and stuff, I would avoid them if I could.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of just I didn't feel like it was worth the worth the effort and the resources.
Yeah, and often it's not necessarily, but I could never let like a little skull head sitting with a bunch of bokoblins. I could never let them pass.
Yep. If I was in the mood and like saw a good opening to like, you know, shoot through the eye of the skull and like knock down the lantern to set them on fire, it's like, all right, let's do this.
See, your Link was maybe a little more focused and like reasonable, and like, no, the real enemy here is Ganon. These guys don't matter.
Yeah. I was very focused on just like, no, I just need to get around here, find what I need, and go take down Ganon.
My Link was out for vengeance.
He's out for blood.
He was out for blood.
Yeah, that's pretty great. That's actually, now that I think about it, that's probably the main reason your time was higher than mine.
Probably.
Because I think you said yours was like at least 100, 110 hours, something like that.
I think my Switch said over 130.
Jeez, yeah. That's. I mean, obviously there's going to be idle time in there, but
yeah.
I need to check mine, but I feel like it only said like 85 hours or more or something when I finished. So.
Yeah, it seems pretty low to do everything.
Yeah, so
you must have been pretty efficient.
Yeah, I would guess that the biggest difference is I really did avoid a lot of combat. Like I did not fight hardly anything that I didn't feel was necessary.
Yeah,
or beneficial. Like so if I saw someone with a good weapon, I'm like,
yeah, well, I'm going to take that.
But if it was just like a generic mob of dudes, it's like I wasn't going to bother with it.
Sure. Yeah. So what was something from your playthrough that stands out to you still today?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
We don't have like 24 hours to talk about this game, although we probably could.
I mean, you got 24 hours. I mean, the Dueling Peaks, which we already talked about, was actually a pretty big one for me. Like I kind of went all up and down those the first time I went through there. I really had, the first time I found a Great Fairy, that was kind of terrifying.
Yeah, the Great Fairies are weird and crazy.
After I went to Hateno Village, that's pretty close to Mount Lanayru. I was like, I need to climb that mountain.
Yeah.
So I from Hateno, I basically just went straight up that mountain. So the first time I went up Lanayru, I didn't go the way you going through that pass.
Right.
From the west of the mountain. I came from the south.
You just climbed it.
Yeah, I just climbed it, which took a lot of, because that was early on in the game and I didn't have stamina or gear or whatever. So that was a big adventure of just really tackling the elements of the snow and not a very well laid out path for climbing that mountain.
Yeah, that's a pretty treacherous climb.
Points in the entire game.
Yeah.
I think only Death Mountain. I think Death Mountain's probably the highest point. And then there's that Hebra Peak.
Mm-hmm.
like somewhere in the Heber Mountains is also really tall, but those are probably the 3 highest points.
Yeah.
Um,
And so,
yeah,
did you struggle to get up? Because like there's like temperature concerns. You have to manage your heat, and then there's like I think there are Lizithos all over that mountain too.
yeah, there are Lizithos and a lot of wolves.
Yeah.
The temperature was the biggest concern because
Sure.
it's just a big mountain, so you're there for a while, and it's like one of the colder places. So you need multiple notches of cold. So that single cold resistance like sweater or whatever you get on the starting plateau is not cut it by itself.
Yeah.
Which I mean that gets you through most of the cold areas in the game. To be honest, it's like Lanayru and Heber are like the only areas that really demand more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I had to do some temperature management stuff. The enemies didn't really bother me that much. I don't know if it was just the path I went didn't have a lot of enemies, or they just, I don't know. I don't remember the enemies being a big issue, but there was definitely, I had to deal with the cold, and then just dealing with like, I think because of the angle I came from was like not quote unquote the ideal angle to scale the mountain. So there was a whole lot of just like, stopping and looking and being like, all right, what's the best way to climb this thing?
Yeah, this was your rock climbing challenge.
Exactly, yeah. And that was a really fun way, I thought, to climb that mountain.
Yeah.
And then you get up to the top of it, because like I didn't have a quest or anything to go up there. This was literally me just being like, hey, I just see a tall mountain, I want to climb it. And you get to the top, and that's where one of the dragon springs is.
Yeah.
So I got to the top, and that one's weird because the other two are just the dragon flying around somewhere, but this one is the dragon sitting on top, all corrupted.
Yep.
So that started that whole like ordeal of like shooting the corruption off of that dragon.
Yeah, that's like a little mini boss fight as well, because you kind of have to glide down the mountain on like the wind pockets that it creates. And you're like swirling around it. It's like a really cinematic moment, actually.
It really is, yeah. Because you start, the dragon's like curled up around the shrine, and you like shoot some of the corruption things off of it. But then, it starts flying like down the side of the mountain, and you're just like gliding and like alternating between gliding and then shooting in the air, which like does this slow mo thing.
Yeah.
So you're like slow mo shooting bow shots out of the air, and then you go back to gliding and like hitting the air things to restore your stamina, and like
so good.
Yeah, that was like just that whole ordeal was just this really cool thing of like seeing I want to go explore somewhere, and then just stumbling into all of like doing all of the climbing puzzling to get up there, and then that leading to a really like epic cinematic boss fight type thing, like, and then unlocking that spring of wisdom and doing all that stuff. Like that was just a really cool sequence.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was really, really great.
Yeah, I think that's just like, that shows so much about this game that we both had like really cool, intense experiences that sort of mirrored like a progression of challenge and like using different skills and systems within the game, and then leading up to like some really neat final trial. Right? Like me going through the promenade and then fighting a Lionel, and you just having this like crazy rock climbing challenge in the freezing cold, and then doing this dragon fight. And those both happen like basically right next to each other on this giant map.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were talking, is like these two experiences were incredibly close to each other.
And this map is just full of stuff like that.
Yeah, and that stuff's literally everywhere. Like those things maybe stand out to us a little more because we both went that direction to start with. So like,
yeah, I think that's the differentiator. It's like you're gonna have a handful of those experiences early on while you're still learning the game and you're a little under leveled.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. I would be curious to hear what somebody's like big early trials were if they just like went west from the start.
I would really, if I ever do play this game again, I'm going to do everything backwards order just to see how it feels.
Yeah.
Like I will go to Hebra first and just see how that goes.
Yeah.
Because like because like by the time I got to Hebra, like I just had so much stuff that like
you could just walk through things.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and there's so many other experiences. Like I remember just running around the Gerudo Desert, and then what are those big sandworm things called? The Molderas or something like that.
Yeah, Molduga.
Molduga. There we go. And like those popping out and initiating that fight. I'm like, what is going on?
It's like down here. It's like a boss health bar appears for some reason.
Yeah. Like those fights were really crazy. And like some of the imagery in the desert actually like really stood out to me. Like those like 7 statues or whatever that like form a semicircle in the desert. Like those were really cool.
Yeah, and you like climb up on them, and there's some puzzles over there. I don't remember exactly what they were, but yeah.
Yeah, there was a shrine that popped up in the middle of them. If you like, there were these. I forget what there were these items. I don't remember if they were kind of the normalish orbs or whatever, but there were a bunch of items that had different symbols on them, and you had to put them in the right statues. But like the orbs were all hidden all around that area, or boxes maybe, and like you had to climb all the statues to find them all.
Yeah, for sure.
That was really neat. And then like there were 3 or 4 of these in the games, but the shrines that were like in the giant mazes.
Oh yeah.
One of them was in the desert. The first one I found was actually in the very upper right of the map.
Yeah, I think
near the Akala area, and I just remember seeing this giant maze like off the shore.
And you're just like,
And I was like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Well, let me save and then just fly out there." And I could reach it from that cliff, the observatory or whatever, and like you're in this ginormous maze, and it's really like crazy that exists in this world.
Yeah, it's just another example of like just like a really imposing structure visually.
Yeah, like that was really fun. It's funny too, like once you get enough stamina on your stamina bar, you can just climb up all the way up the walls of those mazes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you did that, but I totally did.
No, I think I did that for every single maze.
Yeah. And they have a lot of, because all of those basically led to shrines. And there were a lot of cool, like there was some, like north of Hyrule Forest, there was that shrine that basically was like in this really dark, like ruins in a forest where like it was magically dark. So like,
oh yeah,
you remember that? You'd like get in there and you literally couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that.
And you had to like, you basically had to use a torch and like run around and find the orbs and put them in the things to unearth the shrine. And it was and you couldn't like use your map, and
there were just enemies everywhere.
There were enemies everywhere, and there was no day-night cycle. Like it was artificially dark everywhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was crazy. Probably the weirdest.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah, it was really creepy. Probably the weirdest one of those like really offbeat shrines that I stumbled into pretty early and was incredibly memorable experience was Eventide Island.
Oh yeah.
So I went into that like pretty shortly after because it's off the coast from Hateno Village.
Yeah, you kind of have to sail out pretty far.
Yeah, and so I like did a lot of exploring around there after I went to Hateno, and I could see the island from Hateno. But yeah, it's pretty far out there, and you know I made my way out there. I got my leaf and was like, you know, blowing the sail to push the raft, and get all the way out there. And then of course you get out there and they strip you of all your gear.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, solve the puzzles challenge or whatever.
Which, by the way, quick aside, getting on a raft with the leaf and just like drilling in one direction, like feels real good.
It does. You end up going really.
You're like a little speedboat.
Yeah, you're freaking booking it once you get going.
Yeah, it's a really satisfying, like zipping around the ocean kind of feel.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eventide Island.
Yeah, on the way to the island, there was actually a small island with a major test of strength shrine on it. And I went in there, and like this was pretty early in the game, and it was whatever the highest level test of strength shrine is called. I think major is the highest.
I think so.
But it was the toughest one. I went in there like my weapons are not doing anything. So I actually left without completing it. Like I had the warp point, so I could go back whenever I wanted.
Sure.
And then I went to Eventide, and they stripped me all this stuff. And because it was pretty early in the game, like my health and my stamina were pretty low.
Yeah.
And like I spent a while on there trying to do the stuff, but I could not get the orb from the Hinox.
Yeah, they put a friggin' Hinox, which is the big ogre giant guys.
Yeah.
In protection of one of the key items you need to solve this puzzle.
Yeah. So the thing about Eventide is it's like way off in the corner of the map. It's like one of the like hardest places to get to, just way out there. And you get on there and they strip you of literally all of your possessions.
Yeah.
And you have to get these 3 orbs and put them in these 3 things, these 3 pedestals or whatever to unlock the shrine. And one of them is around. It's like on a necklace around a Hinox's neck. Mm-hmm. And me at that stage of the game, I spent so long trying to get that thing from the Hinox because like he would basically one shot me. At my level of health, and it was like, I had nothing. Like there's nothing on that island that's going to deal that much damage to him.
Yeah, like there are weapons and stuff, but most of it's pretty crappy.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not a ton of stuff. It's not like you're gonna find like the holy sword somewhere hidden on this island. You have to deal with very low level gear.
Yeah, so I stumbled into that early on, and like I spent so long trying to get that thing, and eventually I was just like, I think I'm just gonna have to wait until I have more health flavor or something. So I ended up leaving and coming back. But the funny thing is when I eventually came back, by the time I'd come back, I discovered a trick for getting stuff off the Hinoxes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you discovered this. You probably did, but if you like sneak up to the Hinox while he's sleeping, you can crawl on his hand, and he like has this animation to scratch his belly while he's sleeping.
Yeah.
So if you get on his hand and he does that animation, he basically just like places you on his belly, and then you can walk up to the necklace and pick up whatever it is.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. I assume you discovered that.
I don't think I discovered that.
Okay.
While I was playing the game, but I have seen that since.
Okay.
But yeah, I never actually did it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Somewhere. So like, I went to Eventide Island early, and like that was another one of my early just like mind-boggling experiences. Is like, okay, like this game is very clearly willing to just toss the rules out at any point and just be like, no, we're just going to make this thing that's really awesome, like this one-off thing. But I struggled so much with the Hinox and then left. And then like during the course of playing the game, I discovered, because there are Hinoxes everywhere in the world. And somewhere in the course of playing, I discovered that you could do that. So then eventually I'm like, oh, I should go back to Eventide Island and do that. And then when I did, when I went back, I totally just did that trick and just got the thing off him without even waking him up. And I'm like, great.
That's
like we're just
awesome.
Yeah. This was so much easier. Yeah, it's great that there are just little tricks like that. Like there's pretty much always, 1 or 2 ways around what you'd think is the most straightforward way to go. Which is fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Otherwise, like just like almost every area of this world, like, just looking at a map, like comes with certain memories, like, riding through the central Hyrule field, like being chased by Guardians.
Yeah. Guardians are a real thing.
Yeah, they are definitely a real thing, and they are everywhere in that central Hyrule field, like in the fields in front of the castle.
Yeah. One of my big things that I like really appreciated when I was playing through the game was seeing how many Guardians were around Hyrule Castle, and then being like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do that for a while. It's just kind of like, oh, that's an overwhelming force. And like kind of just forgot about it. And it was just like, oh yeah, at some point maybe I'll have enough hearts and good weapons to be able to actually fight those things. But like realistically, they're just tough, and there's a lot of like small increments to how your character progresses that don't necessarily make them like super easier.
Yeah.
Until you start getting those ancient arrows.
Yeah, the ancient arrows.
So the first time I got the ancient arrows, I forget if you just get one the first time you get. I think you do.
Yeah, they're not common.
Yeah. The guy you get them from in the like science observatory up in the northeast, I think.
Yeah, that's where they are.
And I think he just gives you like one.
Yeah, that might be right.
A small handful at most.
And
then you can, trade in a bunch of materials to get more.
Yeah. they're expensive too.
They're expensive. Yeah, you can't get a lot of them. And I was like, I don't really know what this is. And like looked at it in my inventory and it said like, it's, it hinted at it's good for fighting ancient machines or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to save this until the next time I see a Guardian, because I had fought a couple Guardians before that point, just out in the world, like one-on-one, and it was always like a fairly challenging fight. It wasn't like, oh, I can't do this, they're too strong, but it was like, man, if I ever had to fight more than one of these, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then at some point later on, I had this arrow and see a Guardian like down a hill from me and was just like, all right, let's see what this thing can do.
Let's give it a shot, yeah.
And like do this like super cheesy like action movie, like jump off and like shield surf my way down this hill towards it, and it like lights up and you hear the music and it's like like locking on, and I was just
that music is so creepy, by the way.
Yeah. And I just like pull back my ancient arrow and it lights up all flashy and time slows down because I'm riding on my shield, and I just hit it right in the eye.
Totally whiff.
No, that would have been funny. That would have been pretty funny, but no, I hit it right in the eye.
Yep.
Which is a one-shot kill with these arrows.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, okay.
I like these. Yeah. Did you end up getting a lot more arrows?
Oh yeah. I was like, I'm going to get a bunch of these.
Yeah, that is a really cool first experience with the arrows. I think I only shot one of those arrows once, and I shot him right in the eye and he died shot. And I remember getting some more, but I treated him as just kind of like a bailout insurance thing. Yeah. So, like, usually I would still just run from the Guardians and try not to alert them too much.
See, this is, pacifist Link versus bloodless Link. I stocked up on those things, and I went to Hyrule Field, and I said, come at me.
Yeah. See, if I, like, the main thing I didn't do in the game that, other than getting more Korok seeds, which if I wanted to put more time into the game, the thing I would want to do would be get all the gear and upgrade all the gear.
Yeah.
And to do that, you would have to fight a lot of enemies because that's how you get a lot of those upgrade parts.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for the ancient armor, you would have to actually, I think, go hunt a bunch of Guardians, which could be kind of neat.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a really good moment for me, like gameplay-wise and progression-wise, but also like it made me feel like up to that point I had been, this guy who didn't have his memory and was probably supposed to fight Ganon, but didn't really know how to do anything.
Yeah.
And that was like, no, I had taken the next step towards like being able to really challenge this overwhelming force. And so it was just like a really good, like bolstering moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good point of like, I mean, this game, you spend so much time exploring this world, and the way the story works into the game is like you don't really know a lot. Like, I mean, they pull the old amnesia trope, but it works for what this game's going for, and that like you don't remember who Link is and what his purpose is and all this stuff, and you don't remember anything about the state of the world or any of its creatures or inhabitants or machines or whatever. But as you explore the world and you the player, learn more about how to interact with things, and Link the character is also learning more through memories and like just the experience of fighting things, and you'd think Link's probably like reawakening like his fighting abilities and stuff as you the player are also like learning and understanding how to fight things. So like all of that really gels together really nicely, and like I totally get how you would have those moments like the one you just described and be like, like both me as the player and Link, the character, are like really like learning to master this world and learning their place in it.
Right. And like working towards our objective, which everyone basically spends the whole game telling you like, I don't know, man, like he's pretty bad.
Yeah. Ganon's a rough dude.
To kind of expand on that a little bit more, there was one memory that I remember that you unlock. And all the memories are, points you go to in the world that show you a scene between usually Link and Zelda in the pre-apocalypse.
Yeah, the other champions are in a number of
Yeah, they are.
pretty much focused on Link and Zelda.
Yeah, but there was one memory that I don't remember where you unlock it, but it must have been somewhat early on for me because I remember my reaction to it very specifically is like Link and Zelda sitting on the top of a hill, and there's just like dead enemies everywhere around them. There's like piles of dead bokoblins and Lionels and like all these things. And she's just like, yeah, don't push yourself. Like, you're pretty good at this, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
eventually you gotta get tired.
Yeah. And Link's just sitting there like all stern-faced like he is all the time.
Yeah,
like,
he's always a blank face.
And I was just like, oh, that's ridiculous. They could never like throw that many enemies at you in this game. And you survive, but by the end, like, you totally could, dude.
Yeah, you totally. Yeah, like once you as the player just like learn how everything works and learn how to fight the enemies and all that stuff, like you can handle a lot of crap.
Mm-hmm.
In that game. Yeah, it's. I mean, I guess this is a good time to transition to like the story stuff in general. Like how did you like this game's like general plot through line and like how they presented it through the memories, which the plot. Like how did you find all of that stuff?
I liked it definitely overall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I liked the memories being collectibles scattered around the world. I mean, I guess that sort of does fit with the rest of the design, so I don't dislike it.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up, like, at the end of the game going and just, like, finding the last couple and then not really digesting them, I guess.
Yeah, they're a weird thing, the way they're just kind of, like, almost collectibles in the world.
Yeah, they're collectibles, and you can find them in any order, and some of them don't make a lot of sense as a standalone scene.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the best way to convey that stuff, but...
Yeah.
I didn't hate it either.
Yeah. If you find all of them, I kind of like the idea of being able to find them in any order.
Mm-hmm.
Because it had this feeling of like just piecing together what happened. I mean, kind of in a way like Gone Home, you're piecing together stuff and it can happen in different orders depending on how you explore. Like it kind of reminded me of that, and that like, yeah, you're piecing together this picture of what happened 100 years ago. And as long as you get the full picture, like the order adds kind of a personal touch to how things are unfolding, or like her story or something. It's like piecing together stuff in your own order. Yeah, I think is interesting. But yeah, I totally agree that some of them by themselves, like if you don't get all the memories, then some of them by themselves probably are a little weird.
Yeah, and some of them just don't feel super important, and you're kind of like, well, why was that a thing? I don't know.
But the full picture it paints, I think, works.
Yeah, I think so too.
For the most part. I mean, I don't think like the dialogue and the voice acting and just the general like presentation of those scenes is always the best.
Yeah, the voice acting's not great.
Yeah, especially for Zelda, I would say it's actually
it's not very good. It's unfortunate because she talks a lot.
Yeah, she actually does. That's probably one of my lesser favorite parts of the game is just some of the execution on that stuff.
Yeah, I think the writing generally is pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
At least I appreciate their, like, I don't know, something about the tone of Breath of the Wild from the jump is just like super confident, and it just like it's very blunt about everything, and it doesn't explain anything to you because it doesn't feel like it should. Or
it's a lot more. Yeah, it's a lot more. Yeah, just like low key and matter of fact.
It's very restrained, but it's not misleading ever. It's just like, oh, here's the thing. That's what it is. They
don't blow stuff out of, I mean, despite all the ridiculous stuff happening, like they don't blow stuff out of proportion and make it like overly dramatic and all of that. Like,
right.
Like, I mean, most games in general go the other way where they try and like make things overly flashy.
Yeah, they oversell everything all along.
Yeah. And I really liked, I mean, and it wasn't just those scenes, but like the game as a whole, like you said, like really has this tone of like, I mean, it really helped to me make the world feel like a real place. It was like, there are things happening in this world and bad things happening, but they just happen and they don't need to be like blown up out of proportion.
Right.
And oversold, like you said. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really, I actually really like, the story beats like by themselves weren't necessarily like, it's not the most profound story in the world, but I really like the tone of it.
And I think part of it's not profound just because there's not a lot of it.
Yeah,
because their focus is not on the storytelling.
Yeah,
I think.
which I appreciate. I really like that.
Yeah,
that it's the story is not, taken too much of a front seat, because I mean, really, the thing about this game is exploring that world. So like, I appreciate the amount of story that's in there. I think it's appropriate.
For sure. Yeah, and I think there are some interesting themes in there. Like Zelda is an interesting character, and
there are a few really interesting scenes with her about like her duty and stuff, which is probably what you're getting at. Yeah,
everything that deals with sort of her position in the world and her relationships with everyone else.
Like, particularly her dad.
Her dad and Link.
Yeah.
Where like she's duty bound to awaken the power of the goddess to seal away Ganon. And like that's her thing. That's all she's for.
Yeah, like that is her purpose for existing.
Yeah.
And she really struggles with that.
Yeah, she doesn't feel so good about that.
No, she really does not.
Partially because she's simply unable to find that power.
Yeah.
She would probably feel okay about it if she had the power.
Yeah. I mean, she still may not feel like that's what she wants to do with her life, but
maybe
like, she'd feel better about it for sure. I mean, and it's an interesting way to like take Zelda. I mean, because there's been a bunch of Zelda games, and like the incarnation of Zelda's a little different each time, but the vast majority of the games, she's just like, she gets kidnapped, and then the second like Link gets to her, she knows exactly what to do. Yeah,
she's usually very appropriately based on the Legend of the Triforce, all that good stuff. She's usually very wise and like in command of her abilities and knows what needs to happen. But this is not that Zelda.
No, it's not, which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good take on Zelda.
Yeah, for sure.
I also really like the setup that the king gives you at the very beginning. Like once he gives you the glider and he gives you really the only story dump of the entire game.
Yeah.
When he hands you that glider and reveals that he's the king.
Yeah.
Or the ghost of the king or whatever. And he kind of gives you that spiel of like, this cycle has been happening for like 10,000 years or whatever.
Right.
Of basically like Ganon constantly trying to come back and destroying the world, and a new incarnation of the hero has to rise up every time. And like, in a way, you can kind of take that as contextualizing the entire franchise.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, they directly call out to some other previous games at some point. I couldn't tell you the exact quote at this point, but I'm pretty sure Zelda at some point says stuff like about time and Twilight or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like I thought it was, I mean, it's very simple and everything, but like I still thought it was a cool way to just contextualize, like, no, like this is the Zelda story, like this is how this works. It doesn't need to be fancy. And it's like this is what Hyrule's all about.
Yeah, for sure.
Side note on that, I actually really appreciated that, like, if you really pay attention and zoom in on the map, like a lot of little like mesas or ponds or like cliffs or like everything has a name, and the vast majority of them are
callbacks
to any number of things, major or minor, from other Zelda games.
Yep. There's a Minish Forest or something, I think.
Yeah, there's Linebeck Island.
Linebeck Island. There's Lon Lon Ranch is just in there.
Yeah. There was like Tall something, which is I think from Minish Cap. But yeah, I mean, it's just like almost everything that's named in this game is from some Zelda something.
Definitely.
which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that stuff was all very strong. Whenever I would see it, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I guess following from the story stuff, like how did you like when you finally did decide to go to Hyrule Castle and take down Ganon? Like, how did you like Hyrule Castle and the ending and all that?
So I'm curious what you think, but I wanted to like Hyrule Castle a lot more than I actually do.
I think I would have liked it more had I done what I think they actually intended players to do more, which was go in and out of it during the game.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Because I didn't go into it until the very end, and by then I was so powerful that I just kind of ran through it and beat the game, and that was that.
Yeah, and I think that is the problem I had, and the reason I think it's still cool and interesting is that it did seem designed that way. Because when you go into Hyrule Castle, first of all, that place looks cool as crap.
Yes, it does. Holy cow. Yeah, I really, like, once I went in there, I'm like, man, this is just a really awesome area.
Yeah, this is a visual spectacle happening all around you.
Yeah.
The sky is nuts, and everything is really twisted and, like, dark looking. And
I mean, yeah, even just getting into the castle, there's like that moat around, and like you see all the flying guardians around.
Yeah,
like just that process of finding a way into the castle is already like just a really awesome thing to see.
So, like, all that stuff is great, and I think is what I wanted from the final dungeon of this game. It was like, yeah, give me the spectacle, give me the set piece, like give me the cool thing. But then you get in there and it's like, oh, this place is actually huge.
Yeah. And that was the other big surprise for me is like when you see it, like while you're roaming around the areas around it and you see it, you're like, yeah, it looks large, but not like in the grand scheme of like the things in that world, it doesn't seem that large.
Yeah. And I had the expectation that I would go in and it would be a traditional dungeon crawl, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to go through the pathways and fight the enemies they want me to fight and then get to the boss.
Yeah.
It is not that.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's once you get in there and like your map actually switches to a map of the castle and you realize just how many like hallways and passageways are there.
Yeah.
I ended up realizing like, oh wait, this is just its own area in the world. Like this isn't a standalone dungeon. Like this is just another area in the world, just like Hyrule Field or Lanayru or the Faron Woods or whatever. It's just another area like any of those other areas are.
Exactly. So it is just another area that's completely separated out from the rest of the game, which I think is a really cool idea. And like you said earlier, I think the intention is for you to kind of like poke your head in and like pillage some good items and like explore a little bit. And then when you're spent on resources, like retreat out and then go do more stuff.
There are really good items in there.
Right.
Hyrule Shield is in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I think that's a cool idea, but I don't know whether it's my fault or the game's fault that I didn't get that at all until I went in.
Yeah, I think it's a little of both because the game does give a few hints. Like I found really early on, I got some side quests to go in there and get some gear and some cooking recipes and some things like that.
And
so the game does have a few hints like that, but I don't think those hints are maybe strong enough.
That's pretty much where I fell on it too. Like when I got those quests, I got those same two quests. It was like, hey, there's good weapons in there. You should probably go look. And then the other guy's like, hey, we got recipes in the library of the castle, and maybe you should check it out. And it's like, well, why are you giving me that? I just started. Like, I'm not going to go to the castle now.
I got those really early on in the game.
Yeah, they're super early, right along the like starter critical path that most people are going to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being really confused when they gave me those quests. And just ignored them.
Yeah, I was super confused, and I was like, I'm not going in there. That place is terrifying.
Yeah, I was like, I can't get through all these guardians. I have nothing.
And plus it was a side quest, so like the side quests in this game were not, to me, the strongest things.
Right. And so, yeah, I was really confused by that. And then when I got to the castle, I had this moment of like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't understand what the
Yes.
game was trying to tell me. And I think that you're right. They just didn't say it strongly enough. And maybe that's okay. Because I don't want, this isn't the game you want to be beating you over the head with, hey, you should do this.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of a letdown. Because when I got to the castle, I was like, all right, Ganon, you and me, buddy.
Yeah, it's like
we're gonna do
like
this.
you were probably in a mindset when you finally went in there of like, I'm Ganon.
Yeah, and that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I did not explore that castle at all, but I bet there's a bunch of cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I went in and out once because I got to a point. So I had done some skirting around like the outskirts, just kind of generally looking for stuff because I think there's one or two shrines kind of close to the castle.
There's one inside of it.
Yeah, so that's where I was getting is at some point I realized, oh, wait, there is a shrine and a memory inside the castle.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to get there because I didn't think they would do that because that seems insane.
Yeah, I was the same.
Yeah, but eventually I sussed that out. So I had a run where I went in, I found the shrine, I found the memory, and I did those side quests, and then I went back out.
Right.
So I did have one run, but it was still kind of targeted because I felt very nervous about like exploring too much of it, I guess.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I think that's just a case of like, in a lot of ways, this game, like Breath of the Wild, is just like super forward thinking and like breaking convention in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the idea of this super monolithic final dungeon being right in the middle, and you get the quest to go there and fight the final boss right from the end, like that combined with like the standard like gamer thought process of how to tackle a game.
Yeah.
Like totally at odds with the idea of going in and out of the final area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like there's like more working against them in that regard than maybe they even thought about.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, because they're having to overcome. I mean, they did a really smart job with so many aspects of this game of like overcoming the traditional like gaming mentality, but maybe with the Hyrule Castle they didn't quite nail it the same way they did other aspects of the game.
Yeah.
Because I totally have the mindset of like I'm going to go do everything I want to do, then go to the final area and beat the game.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think maybe if they had like a better way to point, like I mean, if this was I was about to say like maybe if they had a main quest like dip you in and out of the castle early on, but like this game's just not structured that way, so
it's not.
Yeah, so
like,
I mean,
the only way they could have maybe done it was to have the tutorial section be even longer. Mm-hmm. And like force you to go there.
Yeah, like maybe one of those 4 abilities you get off the plateau, you would actually get in Hyrule Castle instead, or something.
Yeah, or something like he just warps you to the castle, like right off of the plateau or something,
right?
And then you're just like, "Uh-oh, this is bad."
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the way it is, but yeah, I think just something about the way they introduce you to it and like explain it to the player does maybe not clearly convey what that area is well enough.
Yeah, and that was my biggest disappointment with it, is that I didn't understand what they wanted that area to be until I was like past the point of being interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just a bummer.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer. I mean, when I went back in the second time to complete the game, I did poke around a little bit just because I was very curious, like, what is this area?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, I definitely did not explore the entire castle because for the most part, I had the same mindset as you of like, I'm going in here to kill Ganon.
Right.
So like, I did a little bit of poking and prodding just purely out of curiosity because I wanted to just know what that area was. But yeah, it would have been kind of nice to have a better reason to like explore it more fully.
Yeah. But then again, I bet that there are people out there that had an early game experience where they got the side quests to go find recipes in the castle and like tried to sneak their way in there and like find these items with nothing. And that was probably like a really cool experience for that person. So I don't know. Maybe they did it right.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a possibility for sure. I mean, if I played the game again, like if I ever do another run either on normal or hard mode or whatever, like I would probably make it a point to dip in and out of that area earlier on.
I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the things I would do to shake up a second run through the game.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's some really good gear in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've seen any of the like speed runs of this game, they always like run through parts of the castle and pick up a couple of like really powerful swords.
Yeah. The speed runs are basically like get to the castle as quick as possible, like locate the 2 or 3 good weapons or items you need, and then go kill Ganon with them, because there are good enough weapons in the castle to kill Ganon with.
Yep.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we've been going for a while now. I have 2 semi-related topics that I wanted to end this off with. But before we get to like kind of closing remarks, anything else you want to bring up?
Here's one thing that I did not see at all and read about after the fact. I'm curious if you saw it. Terrytown. Okay,
that was one of the things I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Did you do the Terrytown quest?
I did not, and I wish I had.
So this is one of the things I have written down in front of me that I was going to, make sure I said. The Terrytown side quest was one of my favorite things I did the entire game.
Yeah, I heard about it after the fact, and I didn't go back and do it, but like that's the one thing that I really regret that I just didn't find for whatever reason. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, so I actually ended up doing all of the side quests I found in the game. I never actively went and sought out side quests, but I talked to every NPC I encountered, and every side quest I got in my log I completed.
Right.
And one of them was the one that it starts out of buying that house in Hateno.
Right.
So like, and at first I was like, this is a really rote thing, because like their first few tasks are basically like go talk to someone and then go deliver a bunch of wood. It's like
I think I probably found the quest and then just didn't follow it past the first step or something.
Yeah, because at some point early on, it's like, give me like 30 bundles of wood.
Yeah.
And it's like, at that point I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, do I really want to go just chop down a bunch of trees?
Right.
But in the spirit of like just following things through and like seeing what they were and doing all the side quests I had, I'm like, I'll do this. And it really, it kept on. It was basically like the structure of that quest chain was basically you got the one guy, I forget what his name was. I think it started with an H. But you get that guy, and like Terrytown is located on like this like insanely picturesque island in the middle of a lake. And he's building this new town, and you go. I'm trying to figure out what his name is actually. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it. But he basically he first asks you to Hudson. That's his name.
Okay.
And he goes and asks you to. It's like, oh, we need someone who can knows how to work with rocks and build things or whatever. And so you have to go find a Goron.
Right.
And he has this silly rule that everyone who lives in the town, their name ends in son. His name's Hudson. So I forget the Goron's name, but it ends in, it's like something son.
Nice.
And so and then after the Goron, you have to find a root, a Zora. I forget the order, but there's, you have to find one of each of the 4 races.
Yeah.
So in between each of those 4 of finding people, you have to give them a whole bunch more wood. So it's like, first you have to give them 10 wood, then 30 wood, then 50, it keeps getting to be more wood at each step. So it's this alternating thing of finding someone and then giving him wood. And at some point I'm like, oh, this is getting really annoying, having to get all this wood. But once I realized what he was doing, I was like, oh, let me make sure I get it up to the next stage, because I haven't been to the Gerudo place. So let me get it up to where he needs a Gerudo person. So when I go there, I can just do it while I'm there.
Sure.
But what's really neat about that quest is that so much of that world and the lore and story of that world is about ruin.
Yeah.
And it's about like you go everywhere in that world and everyone's just terrified and you see
Yep.
all the destruction that Ganon and his minions have caused and like everyone's just trying to scrape by and
Yep.
like figure out how to survive in this world where they're super oppressed.
Yep.
And like Tarrytown is the one thing in that game that is very like progressive and hopeful and like trying to build up this thing. And they end up bringing someone from, you have Hudson, who's a human, and then you get all the other 4 races in there, and they all build stuff. And like, it's a really nice thing. And for as annoying as like the back and forth was for all the steps of the quest, the way that's structured ended up making it a thing that was a constant presence during my playthrough. Like it was something I kept going back to.
Right.
And at every step where you bring a new person, so it's like, you'd bring a person back, you'd go there and see him to tell him you did that. And he'd be like, oh, great. But then when you went back to the town, you'd see their effect on the town.
Uh-huh.
So each of these steps where you'd go back to either tell him you found a person or to give him wood or whatever, you see the town built up more at each of those stages.
Yeah.
So you really got to see it like blossom. And
that's
also
so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And there's 2 other fun tidbits. So the people you bring would also open up shops.
Uh-huh.
So from a gameplay standpoint, they actually sold really good stuff.
Okay.
So each of the people you brought to the town was mechanically useful. My favorite detail about Tarrytown, though, is the music.
Okay.
So the theme starts out like it's a really beautiful thing. Like it actually might be my favorite song. Is the Tarrytown theme, and it starts out very simple, very pure, just very peaceful.
Yeah.
Every time you find another person to bring to the village, it adds in a new like I don't know what you'd call it, but like a new instrument and like melody or whatever to the theme that represents the culture of that race.
Nice.
So when you bring in the Goron, that adds the drum track to the song.
Yeah.
When you bring in the Zora, it's like the sound that sounds like the Zora's theme kind of to the piece. So like
a harp or a piano or something like that.
Yeah, I forget the exact details, but if you just go to like YouTube or something and look up like Tarrytown theme, like you can hear all the progressions of it. But it was really cool that like you go back each stage and you see the town build up more, and you also audibly hear that extra layer in there. Like that was really cool. And like when you complete the entire quest line and the town's complete and you have the full theme, it's this oddly like cosmopolitan, like everyone in the world coming together to build up this thing. Like it's really cool.
Like a super, like you said, hopeful earlier. It feels like a group of refugees coming together to like build the new Hyrule, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what we can be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Like that. Yeah, it's a really like just magical thing embedded in that game.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's so good that they did that.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite things in the game, and which is funny because it started out being kind of annoying getting a bunch of wood. But,
right? Yeah,
like, I'm glad I stuck with it because it blossomed into something really awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and there was another side quest that I didn't. There was another thing that I, similar to you reading about Tarrytown. Apparently, there's a big side quest that I didn't do that involves the who's the harp playing guy or the accordion playing guy? Sorry, the bird.
Oh, Cass, is that his name?
Yeah. Apparently, there's a big side quest where you like find his children or his family and round them up or something. Like, apparently there's this is one where I didn't do, but read about afterwards, but there's a big side quest involving him that's supposed to be really good as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good, like, for as much of the side quests can be fetch questy.
Yeah.
Like, there are definitely a small handful that, like, are really good character work and, like, have NPCs that you actually can care about and are, like, interesting people. Like, I really like Cass, he's your bird bard who like points you to a bunch of shrines. So like he's useful, but he's also just like an interesting dude.
Yeah. One of my favorite areas in the game was it was somewhere on the East Coast, I think, but it was like near all these like wrecked ships and stuff in a lagoon. Mm-hmm. And he had one of his puzzles to like, go through some wind to find a shrine, but it was like exploring this like stormy shipwrecked coast and like finding him there and playing his song and like guiding me through that area. Like that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I sort of remember that one. Every time I heard that dude playing his accordion, I was like, "Oh man, it's Cass!"
Yeah, I got excited every time I heard that. Yeah. But yeah, like most of the side quests in the game, I actually didn't. I feel like that was one of the weaker parts of the game.
Sure,
because a lot of them were fetch questy. But the good side quests were really like Terrytown or the Kaz one, focused on like characters and how they get by in that world.
Yeah.
And that was like the best side quests were not the ones that were like a gameplay focused thing. They were ones that like just fleshed out that world more.
For sure. Yeah. Cause like we were kind of saying earlier, they like that world feels real and alive, but they don't like they don't beat you over the head with it. So like when you get those direct windows into like people and their lives, it's like really impactful.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's the power of not overselling. Like, so I mean, this is a much bigger discussion, but like like you guys often call me like a gameplay person. And a lot of that is because I think when stories beat you over the head too much, like I genuinely feel like it loses its impact. And I think in games like this, like Breath of the Wild, where they don't directly tell you stuff a lot and they just let you explore it and see the world for what it is.
Yeah.
I like firsthand, I think that can be way more effective. And when they can have you explore that world on your own and just run into those like situations and scenarios, like I think that's a much better way to flesh out a world.
Totally.
And I think they get enough of that in this game to really bring like the world. I mean, it's obviously a fantasy world, but like this world feels more quote unquote real than the vast majority of video game worlds.
Yes.
Because of the way they pull that stuff off. And it's really great.
Yeah.
I got one more call out I want to make, and this is a quick one. And you'll remember this, as I sent you, this was very early in my playthrough. Like as I was heading east, and I like kind of veered south a little bit towards the Farron area.
Yeah. And
I saw in the distance, I saw one of the dragons flying around.
Yeah. Was this before you went up the mountain and fought that dragon?
Yeah, this was even before I went up the Lanayru mountain.
Yeah.
And like that was actually my moment with the game where I realized that anything's possible.
Yeah. This is a truly like wondrous place, and who knows what's around the next corner.
Yeah, that was the moment, because I was just going about my business. Like I'd done the plateau, I had like made it to the dueling peaks and kind of explored around a little bit. So like I had done just enough to like kind of get a sense of what the game was to some degree. And then you see that dragon just flying off in the distance, and I'm just sitting there staring at it blankly, like blinking my eyes. It's like, what is this game? Like, they can do anything in this. Like that was kind of like the proverbial, like, just, I don't know, like just sparking the imagination, being like, literally anything's possible. Like nothing is off the table for this game. Like it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And like that, like from then on, it was, as we've said before, like explore everything, because you don't know what you're going to find. Like there could literally be anything hiding anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the openness of this game, when you see that dragon, you immediately know, like, oh, that's a thing that like I could go and like track this guy down and like see what his deal is. And I don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to try to eat me? Is he going to be a friend? Like, we don't know.
Yeah, I had no idea. I literally had no idea what the thing was. And and like if this was any other game, I would be like, oh, that's just some like scenic background thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he'll come into play later in a cutscene. right?
Yeah, exactly. But like I had played enough of the game to know that like no, that is almost certainly something I can go to and interact with.
Yeah,
and sure enough, it is.
And like I don't know, actually interacting with them is maybe a little less interesting, other than the Linearu one, because you just kind of get in their way and then shoot at them and they drop items.
Yeah, they're just kind of flying around a set path, and like attacks will shoot off of them at you. But it's you just kind of like shoot at them as they're flying along their path.
Yeah.
So it's not as interesting as it could be. But
it's like actually a little underwhelming when you find one.
Yeah.
But that sight of seeing it in the distance, especially early on, is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was definitely a spectacle thing. And like it also like I mean, this is one of the rare video games where I totally did the thing of like seeing a place in the distance and being like, I'm just going to go there. Definitely. Like this was the rare game where I just regularly let myself just get sidetracked by my curiosity. Mm-hmm. And I would not like having experienced the full game. I'm glad I played it that way.
Yeah.
So I have two questions to wrap it up. First, I want to know, do you have like a favorite area of the game that just like warms your heart or whatever? Like you just have a fondness for a particular area, and it's like for whatever reason, it's like I just like this area. Like I just want to be in this area.
Huh. That's a good question. I mean, I think I could probably come up with multiple, but the first thing that pops to mind is just
I just want you to think of one.
Is just Kakariko Village.
Okay. Interesting.
I basically used that as my home base.
I did the same thing.
And so like I would just always warp back there, like go up to the Great Fairy and see her and all her weirdness, and then like go down to the town and go to the fire and like make a bunch of food, and then maybe go sleep if I wanted to like regen my hearts, or I would go to the arrow shop and just like buy all the arrows. Yeah,
you have to buy a lot of arrows in this game.
So that ended up being like a routine that I just went through constantly.
And there's also the shrine to pray at to turn in your orbs.
It was just like, oh, I'm going to go to Kakariko for a few minutes. Just like maintain. That felt like my like
reset button.
I'm the adventurer like off on a grand quest, but I have to come home to like recharge every now and then. And that ended up feeling like home.
Yeah. I did that a lot as well. And I would grab fairies.
Yeah, you go up to the fairy fountain, and then you upgrade your equipment if you have stuff to upgrade, and you grab
quick
fairies.
Sidetrack on that. What kind of equipment did you roll with most of the game?
I know by the end I used mostly the barbarian set.
That's hilarious.
Which I think fits with my Bloodlust Link
I think
playthrough.
it does.
Because it just raised your attack power.
Yep, you're not wrong. That's perfect.
It had like lower defense values than some of the other sets, but it raised your attack power with each piece that you equipped. Yeah. So like I was killing things all really quickly by the end of that game.
Yeah. That's great.
I kind of wanted to upgrade the heroes set, like I forget
was that just a tunic? I don't know that I ever found anything more than the tunic.
Maybe it was just the tunic. But yeah, there was like that thing, and then like the what was it called? The ancient armor, I guess.
Yeah, I never got that because I never got the parts for it.
I got all the
or money or something. I just
I got all the individual pieces for it, but I didn't end up upgrading it super far. Like I think I got it to like level 2, which was still really good. So if I wanted to just be really beefy defense, then I would put that on.
Yeah.
But most of the time I was just like, nope, full aggro, let's kill things.
That's great. My default armor was usually the climbing.
Okay, yeah.
I upgraded all 3 of those pretty well, and when you got the level 2 bonus, I think it was like jumping took less stamina or something.
Yes. I definitely would switch to the climbing gear if I was like scaling something large because of that jump bonus.
Yep. Yeah, my default was just to have that gear on because I wasn't doing so much combat.
Sure. Yeah, you're the explorer, Link. That's okay.
Yep. Yep, that was I mean that gear set fit with the way I played, for sure. And then I had my defensive gear whenever I was getting into fights, I upgraded the Hylian armor set all the way.
Yeah. But I think the Hylian and the Ancient armor set had the same defense value.
Oh, okay.
It was just I
would have assumed the Ancient would have had more defense, but
I think it was the same because I think I upgraded them both some. But the Ancient armor set had its special ability was like Guardian damage reduction.
Okay.
So like the Guardian lasers would do a lot less damage if you had that. That's really useful.
Yeah, the one bummer about the Hylian set was it didn't have a bonus.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about the Hylian set, it was pretty cheap to upgrade and had good defense values.
Mm-hmm.
Like the upgrades were easy to do.
Yeah, they were.
And its defense was good. And then of course I also had like my heat and cold sets, but
yeah.
You only use those when you need them. But yeah, I was probably 70% of the time in the climbing gear, and most of the rest was the Hylian gear, unless I needed heat or cold stuff.
Yeah. When I found that first barbarian, I think I found the helmet first. And I was just like, oh man, I want this. When I found the whole set, I was super excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I eventually found the full set as well. I think most of them were like shrine rewards or something.
Yeah, I think they were.
When I finished the game, the one thing I was like, man, it would be kind of cool to get an upgrade every gear piece.
Yeah, that would be really cool, but it would take a while.
It would take a long time. Okay, you really like Kakariko.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, I really like the Akala region.
Okay.
So that's like the very northeast area of the map.
Yeah.
Because like it was a bunch of like rolling green hills, but then it was also like couched right at the seat of Death Mountain. So like you had a bunch of rocky stuff, but then there was also the coast on the east, and the coast was really beautiful because like there was a beach down there, and there was like that spiraling, like I guess sandbar or whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool structure.
It was very pretty, and then there were like these like pillars just south of that, and also Tarrytown is around there.
Right.
So I found myself going there a lot because like there was a stable right in the middle of the area, and then like I just thought the hills and stuff were, and then there's that observatory where you could get like the arrows and stuff. And then Tarrytown was right there. But also, I thought some of the most gorgeous stuff I saw, because that was on the East Coast, so the sun rose from that direction.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the most beautiful scenes I saw were like standing in there, and like it would be sunset, because like that was one of the few areas in the game that was actually just like pure green hills with like without like guardians running around and like destroyed ruins everywhere.
Yeah.
So like that to me, like when the sunsets would come up in that area, is like, man, this is just really gorgeous.
Yeah.
Because you'd basically be looking out like across green fields, and then see the blue ocean in the background with like beaches and stuff, and then the sun coming up. That was a really nice view. I also, I guess, side note, I thought the like big battlefield with the guardians where you get that final memory.
Yes, that was really cool too.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
It's a lot of good striking imagery.
Yeah,
just all across this world.
Yeah. But yeah, I really like pretty much all the regions in this game. For whatever reason, Akala was just like, I don't know, just felt like my happy place, I guess.
That's cool.
Last question, I guess.
Sure.
The big question, like, this is a Zelda game. Like they took risks and changed things up. But like, how do you like this in the context of the Zelda franchise, and then I guess by extension, like in the context of video games at large?
Yeah, I mean, I love it 100%. I don't know what to expect, or even necessarily what I want from the next Zelda game.
Yeah, that was going to be the kind of follow-up.
Yeah, but I absolutely love this game, especially in the context of what that series has been and done, and its history, and its sort of weird, elongated lore, and how it sets against all of that, but also just how it takes modern game design conventions and then explodes those out in a new direction.
Yeah.
It feels totally fresh.
It's so crazy how you can identify so many things from other games in here.
Yeah.
And yet it feels like nothing else.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Like we already mentioned the shrines kind of feel like portal puzzles, like the way you can climb on anything, like almost has a weird like Dragon's Dogma tint to it.
Yeah.
Or Shadow of the Colossus or something. And then like the way you're just kind of free to explore and learn things as you go, like you know, you could almost make like Dark Souls or Witness or whatever comparisons.
Yeah.
And then obviously it has a whole lot of like open world ideas, you know, from your Elder Scrolls or your Far Cry. I mean, you climb towers in this game.
Yep.
Like, you know, you can see little hints from, and then of course all the crafting and cooking and like survival-y type things. Like,
yeah, more RPG and survival game elements than any other Zelda game has had.
Yeah. It's very clearly pulling like all of these elements that are pretty well codified in other games.
Yeah.
But the way it combines them and uses them like does not feel like this does not feel like an Elder Scrolls game. It does not feel like existing survival games. It does not feel like, you know, Dark Souls. Like it doesn't feel like Portal. Like the way it combines all that stuff in a smart way, like it very much is its own thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And retains just enough Zelda-ness to still be a Zelda game.
Yeah, it's still very much a Zelda game. Like, I think, you know, it's missing the traditional dungeon structure, which is probably the thing most people would say makes it less like other Zelda games.
Yeah, we didn't really talk much about the Divine Beast here, but those were one of the things that I probably didn't like as much.
Yeah, they're not amazing. I don't think they're bad.
I don't think they're bad. They're just kind of non-factors, I guess.
Yeah. But I think the first Divine Beast was pretty cool for me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is an interesting way to approach a dungeon. It has like these moving parts. You manipulate it using the map. And they're not super long either.
Yeah, I did appreciate that they were short because that kind of fit in with you're exploring and then take these short diversions frequently.
Yeah. But after I did two of them, the third and fourth definitely felt like, it's another one of these. It's not really that interesting. Yeah.
I was a similar way. As like I kind of enjoyed the first one, maybe two, but after that I was just kind of like, they're not. These are not really the highlight of this game.
Yeah. But I think it does things differently in a really good way. Like even if it doesn't have those traditional big, complex puzzle dungeons like in previous games, it does so much with its open world. You know, we started off by kind of describing some really like intense or important like adventures we had early in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you talking about you going through that promenade and that Lionel fight. Like, I mean, that's kind of a dungeon on its own.
Yeah, and that's what it felt like. And so it feels like a Zelda game to me still, even without that.
It doesn't have the same rigidness that the old Zeldas have had. It's like there are dungeony type things in here. They're just not so clearly designated and cordoned off as dungeons.
Yes, exactly.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is like the best version of Hyrule yet, and it's like, like this is where they really blew it all out. And I think I mean, this has been said a lot, but like, they've really harkened back to kind of the spirit of the original Zelda to me. Mm-hmm. Whereas Zelda over time has, in my opinion, Zelda has like from the original Zelda up through Skyward Sword, I feel like every single Zelda in succession has gotten more constrained and more linear and guided.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And I really appreciated them harkening back to that original like sense of adventure and exploration and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But doing it in a modern context extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Because this game obviously does not have like the frustrating obtuseness that the original had.
Yeah.
I mean, this game definitely has things that are unexplained, but they explain enough of what you need to know.
Yeah, for sure.
That like you're not just going to be banging like. you're not having to burn down every tree to try and find the entrance to a dungeon you have to beat to complete the game. It's like,
no, you have to do things equivalent to that to find all the Korok seeds, but
yeah, sure, but like that's totally unnecessary. It's I don't know that I really want them to go back to. I mean, for as much as I love Ocarina, like that style got kind of tired.
Yeah, it did for sure.
I mean,
but I also don't want them to take these exact systems and put it in another big world. I hope.
Yeah, like I don't know that I want a Breath of the Wild 2 either.
Yeah. I hope they wouldn't just rehash the same idea and systems. As much as I love this game, I think it's very special, and it doesn't gain much by doubling the land size. Essentially, it just
if the next game is just the same thing again with a similar or bigger landmass. That's just I mean, that would be fun, but
I'm not saying I would hate it. That's not what I'm hopeful for, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that would be like,
I don't really know what I'm hoping for though.
Yeah, it's actually a weird thing that like I don't know, like in a way it almost feels like they nailed it to a point where it's like I don't know where there is to go from here.
They made a game so good they killed the franchise.
I mean that's obviously an overly dramatic way to say it, but I mean that's happened before. Like you look at games like StarCraft with RTSs, or like to some degree like Final Fantasy VII with JRPGs, or like these landmark games that kind of came out and defined something. And like, I mean, or even Ocarina of Time for that matter. It's like, you look at that style of like action adventure game, and it was like, it was just kind of living in the shadow of Ocarina for a long time. And like, it wouldn't surprise me if like, I mean, see, like now they've taken a pivot where they made it more of an open world.
Yeah.
Instead of like the more linear structured action adventure that Ocarina was. So like, but I could totally see now this pivoting, and like the next handful of Zeldas like follow this mold and feel similar to how the Zeldas in the wake of Ocarina felt. Which could still be really good games. Like there were still a lot of really good Zeldas that followed in that mold, but they just didn't quite have the same impact.
For sure.
So it'll be curious to see where they go, but
and it's probably expecting way too much to expect whatever they do next to have the same impact. But we're greedy; that's our nature, I guess.
Yeah. Yep, we're definitely greedy. I mean, it's too hard to do that regularly.
It is.
It would also be cool if they still do like 2Ds. Well, I guess they don't have really handheld console split anymore.
Yeah,
but
I guess not.
I mean, wouldn't it be cool to have like a $30 downloadable 2D Zelda or something on Switch?
It would be cool, yeah. They should do that.
Yeah. We'll see if they will. Probably not, but yeah. Well, I think that's probably going to about wrap it up here.
Probably.
Unless there's anything else you want to bring up.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the game's actual ending, but I don't know that we need to. Like,
spoilers, you kill Ganon.
You kill Ganon, and Zelda's like, thanks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really...
Yeah. I mean, it was a really cinematic final fight, but it was also kind of straightforward.
Yeah, it's exactly what you expect.
Yeah. It looked cool, and it was fun, and like I was satisfied with the conclusion, but it wasn't that surprising either.
Right, yeah. So I don't know that there's necessarily much to talk about there, other than I assume the cycle continues on. Like, I don't think they were explicit about...
Yeah, I don't remember... For some reason...
So many games, when they introduce the idea of like, oh, this is all cyclical evil and you're going to fight against it, then usually the characters are not willing to accept that it's going to happen again, and you find a way to break the cycle. But I don't think they did that in this game. I think they just...
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't actually... I either didn't pay attention or don't remember, because it was months ago.
Yeah, I don't think they said anything to that effect.
Yeah, so they might be doomed with this forever.
But I guess at that point, for those characters, like, they had already lived in the apocalypse for 100 years. Like, that's probably enough of a win.
Yeah,
they'll work on breaking the cycle next time.
Yeah. Which, I guess this is really the only Zelda. I mean, Ocarina of Time, you had that 7 years that Ganon kind of ruled things. between young Link and adult Link, but like none of the other Zeldas really have like a living in a Ganon ruled kingdom for long, do they? So like this one doing it for 100 years is actually like...
Yeah, I'm trying to think if Twilight Princess kind of is. That game's so vague with its storytelling that it's kind of hard to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, it is I think a little different in Breath of the Wild, but
yeah.
Yeah, I think that probably wraps up pretty much.
Yeah, I mean there's obviously tons of stuff we didn't talk about, but
yeah. I mean, I could talk
at the interest
about,
of not talking for 24 hours straight.
Yeah. I mean,
we didn't even talk about the cooking.
We didn't talk about the cooking. I could talk about how the first Korok seed I found was like a weirdly magical moment because you just like walk out of the cave and like dove into a pond with a circle of lily pads and it was like, here, take this thing. And I was like, what?
My first one, I used the magnet power to put a stump.
Uh-huh.
And it was right when you walk out of the shrine where you get the magnet power.
Yeah.
It's almost like they did that intentionally.
Yeah. I think there are a bunch right outside of that entry area. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a cool game.
It's a very cool game.
There's so much stuff packed in it. You could talk about it forever. But I think this might be a good point to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
We've got to dig into a lot of good meat.
Yeah. The game's real good. People should play it.
It's a real special game.
It is.
Yeah. And it was fun to talk in detail about it.
Yes, it is.
I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and we just kind of said this weekend, like, we're just going to do it.
Let's just do it.
Let's just do it.
You like talking about video games?
Yeah. And I'd like to make spoiler casts a common thing for ATACS going forward.
Yeah.
This was a good one to be our first spoiler cast.
I agree.
But unless you got anything else, I think that's going to do it.
Let's call it.
For our first ATACS spoiler cast, we've been talking about Legend of Zelda Breath in the Wild for like 2 hours or something.
Mm-hmm.
I am Flex, joined by Nate, and we are going to sign off. That's enough about Zelda for one day. I'm sure this is not the last time Breath of the Wild will appear on an ATACS thing.
No, it is not.
But that's going to be it for now, and hopefully you all have enjoyed listening to all sorts of Breath of the Wild spoilers. And we will see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.